What is going on, my beautiful ladies and gentlemen of the world? I have been doing too much talking lately. My throat is actually feeling it, but that's okay, because there's been a lot to talk about. That's good. It's fun to have a bunch of things that you're looking forward to, that you want to discuss with people. So, after I made, all the Evo stuff, all of the Nate Talks for those, a bunch of you made me aware of the fact that Arc System Works has indeed announced a balance patch for BlazBlue Central Fiction, and that they have the patch notes up on their website. Now, they're in Japanese, so they have been translated. So the number one thing you just have to keep in mind is that you are relying on somebody else's translation. Things may be incorrect, so who knows what may be occurring here, but it's very interesting. And so, before I actually start discussing the patch notes in general, I wanted to ask if that included exactly how this is going to go down. Is this going to be a Revelator 2.0 situation where we are given a balance patch for the game and we are given 2 characters, but we have to pay for like an upgrade, or we have to pay for a new edition, or whatever's going to happen? Or is it a free balance patch and then you have a DLC character, at least in Jubei, confirmed, and maybe more on top of that come out and are released for the game in general? And I'm very interested in knowing that specifically. And so if there is actually any information about that, I would really appreciate somebody letting me know, as well as anybody else that is not aware of it as well, in the comments. But so the main thing for the patch notes that I've kind of seen, now I'm not going to go over I actually started a little bit earlier. I started going through it line by line and discussing my thoughts of every single change. And then it came to me that, like, number one, I don't have enough interest in a lot of the characters to really be invested in it and have a good discussion about it. Number two, I don't actually know enough about a lot of the characters to really be able to see the implications inherent in a lot of the changes. Now, so I'm not going to do that, obviously. I started over. And I'm just going to discuss the characters that are specifically, so obviously Azrael, Tager, Susanoo. I want to discuss Taokaka a little bit, because I think I want to learn her. And especially, it gets me prepared. I'm using a Kaka, man. It gets me ready for Jubei. Who else? Was there anybody else that I was really interested in? I'll look through the list, but I don't think there was really anybody else whose changes kind of really stood out as something that I'm interested in talking in from a personal investment perspective. I do want to, like, the system changes specifically, I want to go through all of those, and I do want to talk about those firstly and foremostly. But ultimately, so my full feelings after reading this entire change list, reading it over again, and kind of trying to understand it all, the implications of where characters are going to be afterwards, it really feels like there's not going to be much shifting of the tier lists in general. Like, the S tiers are still, I feel, going to remain S tier. They're just not going to be as dominant as they were before. Whereas I mentioned in the BlazBlue specific Nate Talks, where, like, that top 8 of Evo really just highlighted how they're on a completely different level than the rest of the cast. And I think that these changes will make that no longer the case. But I think overall, the characters that are considered the worst in the game are still going to be the worst in the game. And the middle tiers might shift around a little bit, but ultimately I think they're mostly going to stay where they are, which is both good and bad. It's good because you're not seeing this completely random, seemingly random, at least ridiculous shakeup that we've come to expect from Team Blue. So that's good. On the other hand, if you are not happy with who are the best characters in the game you're still going to be unhappy. I think, like, after seeing all of this, Izanami got hit pretty decently hard, but on the flip side of that, and I'll get more into it when I discuss the system changes, I think her ribcage got better, which is horrifying, because I hate that mechanic in general. 9 definitely got worse, but I feel like almost everything every nerf that she got doesn't negatively affect her all that much. Like, a ton of things were like, oh, well, this move now has additional recovery, but that recovery doesn't really matter when you just Gatling into everything anyway, right? Plus, it's that the recovery's only going to matter on whiff, and so the implication there is, well, you might be able to whiff punish her easier. What character in this game outranges 9? that would be able to whiff punish her? Pretty much nobody. So it's not really a factor, so it doesn't really seem like 9 got nerfed all that hard. And I actually think Arakune is going to be the best character in the game after all this is said and done. If these balance changes, if these are all the balance changes, if they are all correct, I think Arakune is actually going to be the best character in the game. Because he got, like, for instance, he gets less curse off of hits on block. But that doesn't matter because if he gets a hit, he's cursing you. He's 100% cursing you. So, and nothing was changed about that. I firmly believe that if these changes go through as they are right now, he's going to be the best character in the game. Carl is still going to be a monster. Really, the biggest nerf that he got is that Ada's meter recharges slower after she breaks. But he's still going to have overdrive to bring it back significantly faster. What was the other? Let me actually... No. I'll get to it when I get into the character-specific stuff. I will have, like... I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to scroll through the characters, and I'm going to discuss brief little thoughts about all of them, but I'm not really going to go in-depth with anybody besides Tager, Susanoo, Bullet, Azrael, and Taokaka. Taokaka has very few changes, so that's going to be super easy. And it basically is going to lean one way or the other. I'll talk about it when I get there. The system changes specifically. Here's the 2 things that scare me the most. The barrier change. They buffed barrier. It could be to an incredible degree. It could be to a small degree. It all depends on the numbers, and we don't know the numbers yet. But basically, they made it so that it starts to recharge faster. Like, as far as I can tell, it still recharges at the same rates, but the amount of time it takes for it to start recharging is slower. And then on top of that, this note just specifically says, amount of barrier consumed when activating it reduced. I don't know specifically what that means. So, does it only affect, like, the first frame that you're holding barrier? Does it only affect that? Or does it include every single frame that you are holding it down? Does it drain slower? Or, again, is it only for that very brief initial moment? So, and the reason why this scares me overall in regard to Izanami is because of Izanami. She's now going to get barrier back faster. That means ribcage is going to be available more often. That's why that change overall horrifies me partially. But the other part is that, like, barrier management is really, really easy. It's basically, Arakune is kind of the only character that you have to hold barrier and can completely drain you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's thanks to the unblockable bug existing, which I don't know why that exists. They haven't changed that at all. It still will exist. So that's a thing. I don't know why they ever added that fucking bug. But other than that, there's really no scenario where anybody's getting put into danger mode all that often. And so to buff barrier as a whole is a very confusing change and kind of makes it so I feel like barrier blocking is going to be a lot more prevalent. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. The second thing is in regard to Exceed Accels. So a bunch of you were like, yo dude, Exceed Accels are negative on block now. They also have minimum damage now, which they didn't have before. So that was kind of the trade-off. You used Exceed Accel as a combo ender, and you didn't get much damage for it, but you got active flow, which means you're gonna land a lot more damage over time, provided you land a hit while active flow is active. Now, not only are you gonna get that, you have a certain amount of guaranteed minimum damage applied to it. And here's the part that could make me lean to a suicidal level of depression. Will the minimum damage be different depending upon whether or not it's a regular Exceed Accel or if it's an active flow Exceed Accel? Because if active flow Exceed Accel has a higher minimum damage base, where you're landing like a 2.5, you're guaranteed like 2.5k or something like that, because raw it does 4,000. So let's say it does between 2,000 to 2,500 damage. 2,500. 25 to 2,000 to 2,500 damage. Somewhere in there. That would be horrifying. And it would be, honestly, I would hate everything about my life, and I would hate everything about BlazBlue. Or alternatively, is it just going to be like, it doesn't matter if you have active flow or not, minimum damage is going to be like 800 or something, you know, like something like that. that would be better, but I still just feel like it's the real bonus to landing Exceed Excel is getting that active, number one, getting active flow. Number two, you have a guaranteed knockdown, which the majority of characters get significant advantage off of. And number three, if you used it off of an OD raid, you just completely reverse the momentum of the game. Like, there's so many net positives that are already inherent with Exceed Excel. Why are you going to buff the damage on top of it? That just screams insanity to me. And so, like, and then the other thing too is that yes, they've posted that Exceed Excel is now minus on block, but that doesn't mean punishable. So it can potentially still be completely free. You still get out of, you know, any kind of pressure or whatever's going on for free. It's just now you don't also get to run offensive advantage on top of it, but you still basically get to reset the neutral and everything because you can just, you know, air dash backwards and jump away or some shit. So it's still hugely advantageous to use, and really nothing particularly bad has occurred to it. Again, it depends on whether or not it's only minus on block now, or if it's actually punishable on block. That the terminology matters, and right now that actual specific phrase is not there, so I don't know, and nobody knows until we're gonna see it in action. But yeah, I'm not happy. I know a lot of you probably thought I would be, but I am not happy because the implications around Exceed Excel's damage being buffed is way worse than, you know, the good that comes from Exceed Excel potentially being negative on block. So, yeah. But let's talk about one of the other big ones that stands out to me in regard to the system changes. More hit stun on crouching opponents. So, again, the specifics matter here. How much more hit stun? So to me, this means it might end up being possible to do fatal counter hit confirms on crouching opponents now, depending on how much more advantageous it gets. Like, I don't actually know the specifics, and I really should. It really doesn't matter overall, I think. But I think you get something like 1 or 2 extra frames of advantage on a crouching opponent. Versus like a fatal counter, you get something like 3 or 4 or maybe 5. You get a ton more advantage, which is what allows you to do these special combo routes that are otherwise unavailable. So to me, that again stands out because this is going to open up new combo routes for every character in the game. And is it going to lean so far toward, you know, like, am I actually going to be able to do fatal counter hit confirms without actually landing a fatal counter? That could be huge for the overall damage within the game itself, and could have very severe implications for the overall game itself. So I'm very that could, again, I think that could potentially be one of the biggest changes that's in the entire game right now. That could be a game changer. Let me see what else is here. We already talked about the barrier. The amount of meter gain on instant block is also increased, so you're going to be seeing a lot more meter getting thrown around. That could have, you know, some game changing implications as well. Active flow only triggers on certain things, whatever. Air throw range is all standardized. So my question there is, does that fix the stupidity that we see with like the teleportation air throws when... So basically, like, for some fucked up reason, it's super easy to air grab somebody that's like above you, but when somebody's just like barely below, like if you're not head to head level, if the person you're trying to grab is below that, it actually becomes super hard to actually air grab them. So are they fixing that? Or are they only fixing horizontal range and not vertical? Because I hate how air throws look in this game. It looks silly as shit when a sprite just teleports into somebody's hands. And so if they fix that, that would be very nice. If they only fix the horizontal range, then whatever. So anyway, let's get into the character specifically. Amane. I don't like how they made his... They reduced his overall combo damage, because it seems like every single C move he has had its damage reduced, but they increased his chip damage. Because he was really solid as he was, and I honestly don't think he really needed any changes whatsoever, but just the fact that they are leaning more toward his chip damage game instead of being just a solid character overall is kind of boring, and I don't agree with the route they took on that. So that's all I have to say about him. Arakune, I mentioned, if you want to look at his changes specifically and see what they are, I think he's going to be the best character in the game now. Azrael, they increased, basically they made his Oki better off of his D move knockdowns. That's the biggest stuff that he had. They changed up his DP a little bit. They nerfed it a tad bit. It depends too, because it's now the second hit will cause a ground bounce on hit. And so I don't know if that means, I mean, it would be really dumb if that meant he got a free combo afterwards. And it might just be a quality of life thing to make it easier to do rapid cancel combos after it hits. But they did nerf it a little bit. It starts up slower, but I don't really care if that move gets nerfed, because it's just, I personally feel like he never should have gotten that move in the first place. He definitely doesn't need it. And so any nerf to it is just kind of like, yeah, whatever. He shouldn't have that anyway, so that's fine. One thing that very much confuses me is that the proration for his Valiant Charger and Hornet Bunker both got reduced, but only for the fully charged version. And that really confuses me, because it requires some very specific combo routes to land those moves, and I don't get why they would include the property where, if you are not aware, if you land a fully charged version of either one of those moves, it forces a fatal counter. Even if it's not an actual fatal counter, it forces it to happen. So why would you make that property and then go in and reduce the damage after the fact? I don't really understand that change. It's kind of weird. But one thing that could be I'm not sure about it, but it could be devastating. They're adding armor to Blackhawk's Stinger during the charge. It seems like it's not going to affect the startup, but I wonder if it depends. Again, all of this depends on specifics that are not actually stated, and so it's all kind of speculation at this point. We're going to have to see it in action. But if Overdrive Blackhawk Stinger becomes a legitimate reaction as like a potential whiff punish tool or a potential anything tool to react to something where you get that Blackhawk Stinger because you just charge through a move and get a counter hit, he gets like 8k damage off of a counter hit Overdrive Blackhawk Stinger, provided he can actually follow it up, and usually that requires the corner. But he gets absurd, insane damage off of that. So that could be very game-changing for Azrael. It may just end up being a gimmicky thing that nobody good actually uses and or falls for, but depending on how it works, that could be some scary shit. So that's what stood up for me the most. But Azrael didn't get really changed all that much. He's always been strong. He's going to continue to be strong. With Bang, the biggest thing that stood out to me, J22A removed the height limitation, can be used right after jumping. So if you don't know what that move is, it's his little float, where he kind of like extends the little cape outward and he floats in the air. To me, that just screams instant overhead city. You're just going to jump, cancel, block strings, and get an instant overhead on you all day long. That's what that says to me. I don't know if there's limitations to how quickly he can do a follow-up after using that move. I don't know exactly how that move works. But just seeing that change scares me. That could be huge for Bang. And he could have the biggest increase in the tier list solely based on that one thing. He got a bunch of other stuff too. He's definitely getting a lot better, and I think he's one of the most improved characters in the game. But depending on how that J22A works, he could jump up quite a bit solely based on that change. So let's talk about Bullet. I think she's still going to be one of the worst characters in the game. She got some weird Gatlings. I don't understand why they made it. Apparently they made 5B and 6B dash cancelable while she has heat up, which I don't get, because I feel like, her dash has long enough recovery that if she tries to use those moves and then dash cancels them, she's just going to get hit out of it. Like, it's not safe for her, so I don't really understand that. The thing that stands out to me the most is that 2C, the second hit launches higher, and then you combine that with a change further down, where Snap Hand's Fist has an easier time grabbing people below Bullet now. So Snap Hand Fist is her 623C, where she jumps up diagonally and air grabs. It's the unblockable air grab. So what that says to me is that they're potentially making it so that 2C can be followed up using either that move mid-screen or using Mikulek Capture, because it launches higher on hit now. And so that could be very, very interesting. It can actually give her a lot better mid-screen combos, a lot better wall carry, and even potentially gives her heat level 1 power-ups. The other big thing is that she now will, before all of this, In Chrono Phantasma Extend, they made it so you could special cancel out of her drive moves, but the drive heat up property would not activate until after the special move had finished its animation. Now, that changes. You hit the drive, you get the heat up, and then you throw out the special move. So this is a huge game changer, because now it makes it so that, like, you know, you don't need to do bullets 1.6k damage into knockdown, get heat level 1, and then do bullets 1.6k damage into knockdown, and then get heat level 2. You can potentially get heat level 1, do a short little combo, land a drive move, get heat level 2, do a special move, and then do the follow-up of that special move that's going to increase your combo damage by a significant margin during the middle of that combo. So, in turn, it seems like her combos got a lot better, but unfortunately, they didn't do anything to her 5D, as far as I'm aware. Her 5D remains exactly the same, so she's still not going to be able to land grounded drive moves during the middle of combos. So that's not going to be a huge change for her, because it's still going to require you to activate a juggle of some sort in order to land a JD, and then you can go into a special move and get the heat up. So it's all stuff that I'm just going to need to see in motion and be able to feel for myself whether or not it really is going to affect her to as significant of a degree as it possibly could. But overall, from these changes, I do think she's still going to be among the worst characters in the game. She may no longer be the worst character in the game, but I think that she'll still be low tier. And because her biggest problem is that her movement is super finicky, her neutral is not very good, she gets outspaced by basically every character in the cast, and nothing has been done to potentially change that. And so that's going to be the biggest issue. But if you bring back her combo routes, if you bring back her ability to hit confirm a lot easier and get more damage a lot easier, rather than having an average combo damage of like 2k, because she gets about 1.3, 1.4 on her basic hit confirms before she gets heat level 2, and then she gets like 4,000 damage combo, and then she goes back down and landing to like a 2,000 damage combo. So we'll see how that goes, but I do still think, unfortunately, she was not given enough to really change her all that well. Carl, he's still going to be S tier. Celica, I don't know enough about the character to really mention anything. S, same thing. Hakumen, the biggest change here, 214D, which is his new charging counter move that he got in this game. The hitbox will activate regardless of actually countering or not. That move is +1 on block. They just gave Hakumen Gustav Buster. Granted, it costs him a meter, so we can't just spam it, but still. Hakumen has Gustav Buster now. Keep that in mind. Just think about that for a second and enjoy thinking about that for a while. He also got other buffs. Hakumen is definitely going to be in a much better place after this. And he's definitely one of the characters that does not need to be in a significantly better place, but he could move up to the top of A tier, even potentially chilling at the bottom of S tier, depending on how these changes all work together. But he's sitting pretty. He's happy right now. Hakumen players are very happy. Hazama, I don't know enough to really discuss all the things. All that I know is they made his drives better, and 214B, which is the invincible follow-up to his stance that he has, now recovers faster. So they made his reversal safer, which is fantastic. Thank you for that. Hibiki looks like he got buffed a decent amount. I don't know enough about the character to really commentate on it, but he's looking good. Izanami, they nerfed the shit out of her. Actually, I shouldn't say they nerfed the shit out of her, because that implies she's going to be a lot worse than she actually is. I still think she's still going to be fantastic. I feel like they buffed Ribcage, which is going to make me so sad if my thoughts are actually true. But they did nerf a lot of her normals. They made it so she can no longer cancel anymore except on hit, so it makes a lot of her things, a lot of her bullshit that should be unsafe is now actually unsafe. That is predicated on the idea, because it does specifically say no longer special cancelable on block, or only Gatling. You can only Gatling on hits, not on block. So the question is, can she still activate her drive projectiles to keep all of this stuff safe? That's the big question. So they did nerf her a bit, but still, the big thing here, Ribcage, Costs barrier on activation now. Depends on how much barrier. But the ribcage release, she recovers more barrier when that hits. That's not a hard move to land. So you combine that, which probably will just offset this ribcage initial cost, with the overall system change of barrier recovering faster, and I think she's going to have ribcage available a lot more freely now without really having to worry all that much about it, and that horrifies me. That really scares me. Izayoi, the big change for her is that her gain art dash and air dash, the landing recovery has been increased. So the question is, how does that affect her instant overheads? How will that affect her mix-up? And will she become blockable now? That's basically going to determine what happens to her in the tier lists. Jin is still, I mean, he got a couple buffs, he got a couple nerfs, he's going to stay exactly where he is. Jin is Jin. Kagura got a bunch of buffs, but I don't know enough about the character to really discuss where that's going to place him. Let me see. Kokonoe, I don't know enough about Kokonoe, nor Lambda, nor Lychee, nor Mai. Makoto's looking good, she got better overall. Mu, whatever. Naoto. So the thing, I mean, I don't really know enough about this character either to really discuss all the things, but the thing that stood out the most for me was that his 6C move, it lost foot invulnerability, can no longer hit crouching opponents, but you can now cancel into specials. It can now be, there's a question mark before can be canceled into specials and then question mark normals. But so what that says to me is essentially, oh also, and then 6C can be gatlinged into from 5D, 2D, and 6D. So what that says to me is he's getting new combo routes against standing opponents, like standing specific combo routes using 6C. So that could be interesting. And on top of that, this change, I need water. This change interests me the most. All D moves after inputting, if you press and hold D again, charged D won't come out. So I don't really understand that. But in my head, what that potentially means is that his dash cancels could have just become easier to do. I don't know if that's how it works. I could be completely misinterpreting that, but that could be the case. And if that is the case, then he just got a lot more accessible. But again, it could be something completely different, and I'm just completely wrong. But Naoto definitely got better. 9 has a huge change list, but I don't really think all that much of it affects her that badly. The big thing is that her DP is now more punishable than it was before, which is good. It should not have been safe on block, and it probably isn't anymore, and then even more unsafe if you make it whiff. On top of that, I don't really... Oh! Rock. Rock is now less advantageous on block. So again, specifics matter here. How much less, like, are we talking about it went from plus 22 to plus 20, or are we talking about somebody fat fingered an extra 2 on the initial frame data for it to begin with, and it should have only been plus 2, and now that's exactly what it is? That's the big question. How much less safe is it now on block? So, but that was the one, like, I was looking for that so hard, and I'm so happy that I found it. Noelle, I don't know enough about. New, I don't know enough about. Platinum, I don't know enough about. Rachel, I don't know enough about. Actually, the one thing that did stand out with me with Rachel was they made JB is no longer an overhead, which confuses me because JA is the problem. So why does JB matter? That I don't get. Was there anything specific with Ragna? Oh, 214D, which I believe is his blood scythe. Body / foot / projectile invulnerability added while in movement. Does that scare anybody else? Because that horrifies me. Let me actually look this up real quick. I want to hopefully look at Dust Loop's wiki. I should have already had this open, but I want to look at the frame data for that so I can actually see. Because I'm pretty sure it's plus on block. And then you're adding invulnerability on top of it. Like, that was the big thing to it, is that it has a lot of startup, but it's plus on block. Plus 3, aerial blood scythe doesn't have any, plus 7 during overdrive. So it is plus, even if you instant block it, it's plus, and now they're adding invulnerability to it. I don't know, man, that scares me. So we'll see how that shit works. Relius, I don't know. Susanoo is very interesting. They nerfed his 6B. Well, they buffed and nerfed his 6B. The hitbox for his 6B is now better, but it is no longer... it has less block stun. And again, the specifics matter here, but they definitely nerfed his pressure there. And one thing that really fucking confuses me, 5C. They nerfed his 5C. They made it even have even less block stun than before. I already consider that a borderline useless move because of the gap in between your cancel from 5C into anything else he can cancel into. It's just, there's a huge gap in there that if you see him move after you block 5C, if your character has a reversal, you get that for free. And now they made it even worse. That's a really confusing change that I just don't understand. 3C now has worse P2 proration, which, somebody correct me if I am wrong here, because I could be completely wrong, but as far as I understand it, every move in the game has two different numbers for its proration. You have your P1 and your P2. P1 is what determines kind of like what combos you can do after you land that hit raw. So like, whatever move you start a combo with, it takes the P1 proration into account. And so that determines the damage scaling for the rest of the combo, as well as how much hit stun decay you get during the rest of the combo. And then P2 proration is what affects moves used in the middle of a combo. So if somebody's already being hit, it takes the P2 proration into account. So this move, this actual note that says 3C now has worse P2 proration, essentially what that says to me is they're nerfing that corner loop that he had, his 3C 236D, 3C 236D, 3C 236D that everybody did. They're nerfing that a little bit. That's what that says to me. But overall, it shouldn't have that much of effect because one of the earlier notes is that his damage proration in general is getting a lot better, so he should have a higher damage output. So it's like, doing 1-3C in a combo won't affect him very much, but if you use it repeatedly like that loop, you're going to be getting less return than other potential routes. What else was in there? He has less, his main super, his main distortion will now do more damage, has higher minimum damage scaling. But overall, that's kind of what, like, it seems like he's going to be doing more damage in return for losing his best pressure tool. And he has a better DP now. That's kind of it. So he didn't get no changes to his dash, and his 2A is no longer a low. So those were the two things that I mentioned. If I really wanted to take this character seriously, those are the two changes that I would need to see. And neither one of them happened. So that's fun. That's sad. It's disappointing, but we move on. Tager. Barely got anything changed, really. 5A has less knockback on air hit. I'm not sure what that actually affects, because you very rarely use 5A mid combo. Like, you might do, if you land a raw atomic collider, you might do a 5A into a JA, JB, JC grand punish. You might do, like, you might confirm a counter hit 5A into 5C. I don't know what this actually affects, what this is intended to affect, so I'm curious. But if anybody does know more about that than me, you let me know. 5B inward hitbox increased. I assume that's just some weird occasion where somebody could be so deeply inside Tager that 5B might whiff them. I don't know. JB adjusted how the opponent is blown away by counter hit, so I don't know what that's going to do, but currently it causes this massive ass ground bounce, so it's just somehow going to change that. J2C upwards hitbox right after startup increased, so this is probably going to fix all those weird occasions where you start a J2C and like you're just barely next to the opponent and your body just flies through them because they're just like a pixel above Tager's elbow or something like that. So it's probably intended to affect that. One thing that I'm kind of like, 360B wedge follow-up is universal for all characters. I didn't even know that there was a difference. Granted, I always just mashed it out to begin with, but yeah, I had no idea that it wasn't universal to begin with, but still, that's just a quality of life change. Both sledges got nerfed in terms of combos, starting combos with them, and for some reason Hammer is now considered a different special move depending on what it's done from. So I don't know again what that's going to affect. It's something that I'm going to have to see. And then the 214D Hammer follow-up, which you can activate if you 214D, which is his Voltic charge where he charges up Spark Bolt, it has armor during it. And if you activate that armor, you can then press 236A and he'll do a hammer out of it to try and hit you. So he'll try to punish you for coming in and hitting his armor. So that'll start up faster now. So, but overall, it just seems like Taeger's going to be basically exactly where he already is. Taokaka, the big change here, her 3C proration got buffed. So the question is, how much? Is this enough to affect her overall combo damage to enough of a degree where she's actually doing respectable damage to her combos? Or is she still staying more or less the same? Because she has barely any changes. Her JB active frames and recovery increased, so her JB got better. 4D stagger on ground hit increased and is now a fatal counter, so you can potentially bait people into fatal counters with that. And you can potentially confirm real combos from it. But then her 236 CB follow, which is that little when she like kind of ducks on the ground and just punches your ankles, that has less recovery on block and whiff, so it's now going to be safer, and it might be a block string tool now, we'll see. But that's not a fatal counter anymore, so you can't really fish with that. And then J236B hitbox increased upwards / downwards. So like Taokaka barely got anything, and really it's just ultimately going to depend on this 3C proration. How much is it going to affect her combos? And I think that Taokaka is still unfortunately going to stay exactly where she is. Terumi got a bunch of stuff, but unfortunately the person that translated it also added a bunch of notes that I don't care. It's really badly organized. Sorry, I appreciate your efforts, I really do, but that's too much to go through. Tsubaki looks like, I mean, she got a couple buffs, she got a couple nerfs. It looks like she's going to stay exactly where she is. Valkenhayn, the thing that's the most interesting, Wolf Gauge cooldown is now a fixed 120 frames regardless of whether you're in the air or on the ground. So prior, that was the big nerf in this version that actually I don't know if it was this version specifically or if it was one of the previous versions, because they did it to Hakumen as well, where Hakumen's meter gain got lessened while he was in the air. But with Valkenhayn, you have to be on the ground in order to get Wolf Gauge to start to recharge. That's no longer the case anymore. So he's going to be able to move around the screen a lot more effectively while still regenerating Wolf Gauge, and we'll see how much that affects. But that's his biggest problem, is that it's really hard to regenerate Wolf Gauge right now. And so actual management of it is quite difficult. So you make that better, you intrinsically make Valkenhayn a lot better, and we could be enough to make him a lot better. Plus, Wolf Grab recovers 25% Wolf Gauge on hit. It used to be that he got full Wolf Gauge if he landed that, which I guess they got rid of that. I had no idea. But now you'll get 25% back. So, I mean, ultimately they buffed his ability to get Wolf Gauge back, which was his biggest problem in this game in general. So we'll see if that brings Valkenhayn back into the limelight and whether or not he starts becoming a menace again. But that's all the characters. That's all I got to say about them. Thank you for listening. I've talked long enough. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Peace.